We're fortunate to have several guests in the audience, and I'd like to acknowledge them at this time. Please stand and wave as I call your name. Elliot Gruber, Director of the National Postal Museum. Janae Nelson, current President, Director-Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Senator Norman Needleman of Connecticut. Theodore Shaw, former President and Director-Counsel of the NAACP Educational Fund.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Gloria. I'm New York City Parks Commissioner Sue Donahue, and first, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Constance Baker Motley Recreation Center. I am so honored to join you all here today as we mark a very special moment in history by paying tribute to a trailblazer and a major figure in the civil rights movement. Constance Baker Motley, born in 1921, was the first African-American woman to become a federal judge. She was a leading jurist and a legal advocate during the civil rights movement, also serving as the first Black woman to hold the position of Manhattan Borough President. Motley was not only a pioneer, but a tangible representation of the contributions and legacies of Black New Yorkers across our city. Parks has named 28 park spaces in honor of the Black experience to help acknowledge the legacies of several Black Americans. Even the site where we stand today was once known as the 54th Street Recreation Center. However, in June of 2021, as part of our initiative to expand the representation of African Americans honored in our parks, we renamed it the Constance Baker Motley Recreation Center, along with 15 other spaces honoring Black changemakers. These newly named spaces feature some of the most recognizable names in African American history, including Malcolm X and Lorraine Hansberry. Local community leaders like Reverend T. Wendell Foster and Black jazz musicians who settled in the Adelaide's Park neighborhood were also honored in this renaming. This pledge was our agency's opportunity to learn and to grow, to encourage discourse about the contributions of Black New Yorkers, while working to make the park system more diverse, more reflective of the people that it serves. Our green spaces and park facilities are a critical resource, and we want to ensure that they bear the names that inspire a pride. Thank you to the USPS, all speakers, all guests in attendance. This truly is a moment where we stand united in our dedication to foster inclusivity, acknowledging the past and paving different avenues for celebrating the richness of our diverse history and the contributions of Black Americans. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here and join you in this celebration.
It's my pleasure to present our dedicating official from the United States Postal Service's Board of Governors, the Honorable Anton Hajar, was appointed to the board by President Joseph Biden in 2021. The Postal Service's Board of Governors is comparable to a corporation's board of directors. They oversee and direct the organization's expenditures, long-range planning, and strategic direction, including its 10-year plan titled Delivering for America, which is the roadmap for improving service, reliability, and modernizing the postal network across the nation. Governor Hajar previously served as the General Counsel of the American Postal Workers Union, AFL-CIO. He has also been an advisor and pro bono attorney in employment discrimination cases, and he continues to serve as legal advisor to the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Everyone, please give a very warm welcome to the Honorable Anton Bajar.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. I'll have more to say in a few minutes, but I would first like to invite our participants to join me for the official dedication of the Constance Baker Motley Forever Stamp.
Oh, no, you continue. I'm just taking you.
It's a wonderful stamp, isn't it? I think it's so fitting that we're gathered in the Constance Baker Motley Recreation Center, not only because of this building's name, but because of its location here in New York City. Because back in 1975, it was a New Yorker, Clarence Irving, who first proposed that the Postal Service include Black Americans in a stamp program surrounding our nation's bicentennial. Irving's proposal was so important and so overdue that it quickly turned into a new program unto itself. And today, the Constance Baker Motley stamp is the 47th stamp in the Black Heritage series. But not only was the Black Heritage series overdue, this stamp honoring Judge Motley was also long overdue. In fact, in her award-winning biography, I have to find my page. Professor Tomiko Brown-Nagin wrote of Judge Motley, despite her tremendous role in the effort to slay Jim Crow, most books and articles on the civil rights movement understate her importance. No television shows or movies imprint her name on the popular imagination. No boulevards bear her name. Her likeness is not even featured on a postal stamp. Fortunately, today we are fixing at least part of this oversight. To look at Judge Motley's life is to see a person who not only conquered adversities, she was a brilliant legal strategist who helped dismantle segregation and served as a role model and mentor for those who followed in her footsteps. Her tireless work and unwavering dedication impacted nearly every touch point of the 20th century civil rights movement, and the Postal Service is privileged to honor Judge Motley with the 47th Black Heritage Stamp. Born and raised in the shadows of Yale University, she had the opportunity to attend college at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. But her train ride there was where she first experienced the devastating and dehumanizing impacts of legalized segregation, and this made her determined to eradicate it. After graduating from Columbia Law School, Judge Motley joined the Legal Defense and Education Fund of the NAACP. From there, she worked alongside some of our nation's most important civil rights icons, such as Thurgood Marshall, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Medgar Evers. And Judge Motley's name deserves to be known among these luminaries because, although others sometimes got the credit, Judge Motley's writings and arguments often carried the day. In the 1940s and 1950s, she tried cases that would establish important precedents on the fundamental inequality of segregated schools, eventually helping draft pleadings that became part of Brown versus Board of Education. And when James Meredith was denied admission to the University of Mississippi, she filed suit on his behalf. She argued the appeals from the lower court rulings before the legendary Judge John Mayer Wisdom, who along with three of his colleagues became known as the Fifth Circuit Four, for their decisions helping to strike down legal discrimination in the Deep South. After repeating the laying tactics by the state, James Meredith and Constance Baker Motley eventually prevailed. I am honored to have clerked for Judge Wisdom. His decisions in this case and others had a profound impact on the United States. But Judge Motley was not only a trailblazer as an attorney, she served historic terms in the New York Senate and as a Manhattan Borough President. And in 1966, she became the fifth woman and the first Black woman to serve on the federal bench. During Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearing, she cited Judge Motley as one of her idols, saying, "It is not easy to be the first, but it is an opportunity to show other people what is possible." Through her work and her example, Judge Motley showed millions of Americans what is possible and left an indelible mark on our nation. Now, regarding the stamp itself, it was designed by art director Gary Noyes and features a portrait by artist Charlie Palmer, who will be speaking to us later in the program. We'd like to thank both Gary and Charlie for their tremendous work. Thank you again for joining us today to honor the remarkable legacy of this amazing woman.
Thank you so much, Honorable Anton Hajar. Those were moving words and educational for those of us who did not know all of the amazing background of this wonderful honoree today, Judge Constance Baker Motley. And now, I have the privilege of introducing someone whom I've only met recently, but is such a warm and endearing person. I'm pleased to present Constance Royster, a distinguished leader and advisor to many organizations in the fields of education, arts and culture, and religion. And she is also the niece and namesake of our honoree today. Like her aunt, Constance Royster began her career as an attorney, but she shifted her focus somewhat to helping nonprofits and academia to improve civic and community engagement. She was the first director of major gifts for WSHU National Public Radio in Connecticut. She was also associate director of development at the Yale School of the Environment, as well as the director of development at the Yale Divinity School, just to name a few organizations. May I, Constance Royster.
Where's my step stool? Good morning. What a joy to be here this morning representing the family of the Honorable Constance Baker Motley. Her son Joel could not be here today, but he's certainly here in spirit. I'd like first to acknowledge my grandparents, Rachel Huggins Baker and Willoughby Baker, and Judge Motley's husband, Uncle Joel. There were never stronger supporters of Judge Motley. Now, would the family, including grandson Sai Motley and our extended family members and former law clerks, and clerks from the LDF, the Legal Defense Fund, who came here by airplane, train, and car to celebrate this triumph, please stand. That's great. Thank you. Thank you to all friends, judges, and the public for being here in support. I would also like to thank the members of the United States Postal Service who carry on the Black Heritage Stamp tradition, the Postal Service administrators, and the Board of Governors. Thank you, Governor Hajar, for your words and reflections. When I read that you had been a law clerk to Judge Wisdom, who featured so prominently in important Southern cases, there was a full circle alignment with today. Many people who worked on this event were like Mike Henry, and I need to mention Claudia Daniels, and with whom I worked very closely, Zoza Bates. Zoza delivered this event to its really fine finish. Thank you, Zoza. Finally, we extend our abiding gratitude to the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee and to our family friend and my Yale classmate, Henry Louis Skip Gates, who, because of teaching obligations at Harvard, could not be here today. Growing up as a Huggins-Baker child, and all the family knows what I speak of, Judge Motley was Aunt Concy, or Aunt Connie, or Cousin Connie, and she enjoyed and hardly missed a family celebration, especially when it involved an educational achievement, or an achievement such as this. And I'm sure she's looking down and enjoying this gathering of so many people. At the same time, we all knew she was a giant among giants. As her namesake, I certainly knew it. But somehow, it never felt like hers was a household name among the other giants of the civil rights movement, or easily associated with landmark clients and cases. James Meredith, Charlene Hunter Galt, Judy Heumann, Melissa Ludke, and others. That was odd. In our quite formal and proper West Indian family, it was unheard of not to give credit where credit was due. In a sense, that's what today represents. This extraordinarily beautiful stamp acknowledges the life and work of an unsung trailblazer of American civil rights and jurisprudence. It publicly thanks her for her lifetime of service to this country. As I'm going through the family archive now, not an insubstantial task, there's plenty to support her place in history. But I found some wonderful correspondence, letters from Judge Motley's home church in New Haven, and from the local New Haven branch of the NAACP. They wrote words of encouragement and pride to a young college student and a young career woman away from home. I thought having saved those letters was a wonderful indication of the human side of being Judge Motley. There was a lot of laughter at Thanksgiving this year at this newly discovered gem. In a letter to her son Joel, who was on a post-college international trip, Judge Motley reported that little Connie, that would be me, got an A- on her first law school exam. Who knew? The point is that we get subtleties and insights from letters that we don't get from emails or tweets. We should all get back to writing letters so we can use these gorgeous stamps. I'd like to think that the creation of this stamp by the United States Postal Service, Tamika Brown Megan's recent biography, Civil Rights Queen, and Charlie Palmer's beautiful art will literally stamp into history Judge Motley's place as a national treasure forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. We are fortunate to have the artist who painted Judge Motley's portrait for the stamp, Charlie Palmer. Charlie Palmer is a brilliant and an award-winning artist whose work is centered at the intersection of creative expression and the Black experience. In addition to this year's Black Heritage Stamp, other commissions for Charlie Palmer have included the cover portrait of John Legend's Grammy Award-winning album, Bigger Love. He's done covers and NFTs for Time magazine and contributed illustrations to several children's books, including The Life of Miriam Makeba, for which he received the 2018 Coretta Scott King John Steptoe Award. Please welcome the artist, Charlie Palmer.
I did not expect to get emotional, but when I heard Lift Every Voice, it brought everything to reality for me. Everybody's been thanked, the Postal Service, the Postmaster, the committee. I want to thank my lovely and amazing wife who's here, and I am, because of her, Dr. Coretta Brown. But what I want to say is, Abraham Lincoln said, all that I am and ever will be, I owe to my lovely mother. I want to honor my mother, who's not here today, but is always here. And I also want to just simply to say that Judge Baker Motley was an inspiration for little black girls everywhere would be diminishing the gravity of her effect. She was a hero, and a superhero because of her courage. And if you could ever put that in perspective, the danger that she was in going to the South to fight for our rights, I can't imagine too many people today that are brave enough or strong enough or brilliant enough to do that. I am truly honored to have the commission to do this, but if I may use a pun, it was so important that I got the stamp of approval from the family, and I hope that you are happy for what I've done. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a distinguished civil rights attorney and scholar, Sherrilyn Ifill, the Vernon Jordan Distinguished Professor of Civil Rights at Howard University, the former president and director-counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, where our honoree, Judge Motley, also served with great distinction. Sherrilyn Ifill has written many books and articles for the nation's leading law journals and newspapers. And she is a popular commentator of stories about race and society for several media outlets. She is the recipient of numerous honorary doctorates and was named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in 2021. Her awards and prizes include the Radcliffe Medal, the Brandeis Medal, the Thurgood Marshall Award from the American Bar Association, and the Gold Medal from the New York State Bar Association. I give you the scholar and the lawyer, the legal strategist, Sherrilyn Ifill.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. That song just took me out, so let me just gather myself. I'm so honored to be asked to say a few words today. This is the second stamp unveiling I've attended and had the opportunity to speak at. The first was of the unveiling of the Gwen Ifill Forever stamp in January 2020. And this feels just as special and important because one is a member of many families. And I do feel a member of a certain family of Judge Motley. I want to extend my greetings to the family, those who are in attendance and those who are unable to be here, to the judges of the court on which Judge Motley served and other courts who were present, and to the members of my other family, the LDF staff, past and present, who are in attendance, and especially the small cohort of LDF Director-Counsels, our current Director-Counsel, the unbelievable and on fire Janae Nelson, our idol and inspiration, the first woman to serve as President and Director-Counsel of LDF, Elaine Jones, and the great, really legal thinker, lover of his people, and true community advocate and civil rights lawyer, Professor Ted Shaw. So I've actually been thinking a great deal about Judge Motley lately and about firsts. You know, firsts are trailblazers. And perhaps because of the challenge of the time we're living in, I've been thinking about what we learned from those who navigated challenging times in our past, particularly those who did it in the public eye. Judge Motley was the second woman lawyer at LDF. For 15 years, she was the only woman lawyer at LDF. She was the first woman litigator to have a child while still actively litigating. She was the first black woman, as you know, to appear in many courtrooms in the South, so much so that she was an object of curiosity. She was the first black woman borough president here in New York. She was the first black woman federal judge, and some of her heiresses are here, like Natasha Merle and other judges who walk in her footsteps. But the truth is that the word first doesn't quite tell the story. Every first knows this, and I'm sure we have a number of firsts in this crowd. I already said Elaine Jones was the first woman Director-Counsel of LDF. She was also the first black woman graduate of the University of Virginia Law School. But first is what the outside world focuses on. It doesn't even hint at the day-to-day challenges involved in being a trailblazer. And perhaps because of these times that we're in, when open racism of the sort that Judge Motley encountered in those Southern courtrooms has returned to public life, when the qualifications of trailblazing black women are openly and crudely questioned and maligned, and, when the universities Judge Motley fought to desegregate have had their hands tied by the Supreme Court in building the kind of learning environment that was denied to Motley's clients, Arthurine Lucy and Charlene Hunter Galt and James Meredith and many others. And perhaps that's why I've been thinking so much, not about what Judge Motley accomplished, but about how she accomplished it. The world in which she became a top litigator at LDF and in which she transformed universities in the South and upended rules of white supremacy was not one made for women and certainly not for black women. What was it like to consistently appear before judges who disrespected you, who turned their backs to you, who issued rulings absurd on their face and openly took glee in it? To have to endure opposing counsel referring to you as she and her simply to avoid calling you Mrs. Motley. To drive for hours in a car with Vernon Jordan every day from Athens to Atlanta for 2 weeks and to not know where along the road you could stop to go to the restroom. To have to call your son Joel at the end of the day of trial from the clerk's office to ask him about his day, to talk about what he would have for dinner. I look at photos of Judge Motley, perfectly coiffed and dressed in the southern heat. I remember because my first trial as an LDF lawyer was in Waco in August. My second was in New Orleans. My third was in Little Rock. It was hot. How did she do it? The poise required to make it look so matter-of-fact and as though she were unfazed. She did all of this. I met Judge Motley first because I didn't know how to do it, how to litigate and raise a young child. And so I reached out to her at the urging of our then Director-Counsel, Julius Chambers. He told me that I should talk to her. I was pregnant and litigating at LDF. And I didn't know Judge Motley, so I cold called her, and she was warm and lovely and said, let's go to lunch. And she took me to lunch, and I asked her the secret, and she said, get a live-in nanny. She was like that, matter of fact, pragmatic, very clear. But I find myself drawing on her example now. I think about the weeks of grief in which she couldn't get out of bed after the assassination of her friend, Medgar Evers, and how she had to gather herself to go on anyway. I think her example in these times is one we can all draw on. Judge Motley knew how to meet challenges. She was essentially pragmatic. She was direct. She was no nonsense. She was smart, and she knew it. She was tough. But she also held an elegance and pride in her beauty. She had a hearty laugh and a great sense of humor. She loved deeply and devotedly her son Joel and her husband Joel and all of you in her extended family, which at that lunch she told me all about. She loved her heritage in Nevis. And she told me, as a fellow descendant of Caribbean parents, that I should get to the churches. The Anglican churches kept really good records. And it only happened 4 or 5 years ago that I was in Barbados and found the church where my grandmother was baptized and where my great-grandmother was married. And I remembered Judge Motley assuring me that that was the road. She loved all of you so much, and she was proud of all of you. And she allowed that love to be seen with people that she didn't even know very well. And she was generous, as she was with me that day, and thereafter we struck up a friendship and we stayed in touch. And I recently found letters that she sent to me in those days when she was doing the research for her book. And the willingness to pour out into someone else was also part of her. So the lesson, challenges must be met with strength, she showed us, with preparation, with excellence. Those were 2 words she believed in as an LDF lawyer, as all LDF lawyers do, preparation and excellence. And strength. She was uncompromising in the face of the most recalcitrant Southern judges, university presidents, and personnel. But life must also be lived with tenderness and joy and warmth. And then at the end of it all, what fully amazes me, despite everything she'd seen, despite all of the ways that she had been treated, even at her confirmation hearing, despite all of the ways in which she could have turned bitter, despite being the person who did so much research on the Brown case and drafted the model complaints used in the Brown cases, and to have your name barely mentioned in the historical record about the case. That's the how. How do you do that? With dignity and with grace. And then at the end of it, still serve. And that's the lesson I take away from this remarkable, amazing woman. The how you do it, yes, you do it with strength, but you remember to hold to yourself the love, the warmth, the humor, the family, the joy. And at the end of the day, you don't allow those slights to allow you to lose your motivation to do the thing for which Constance Baker Motley was made and to which so many of us have committed our lives. We serve. We serve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherrilyn. Make the challenge with strength, preparation, excellence, tenderness, and joy. How do we, after being betrayed and harmed, still serve? Joining us now is the Honorable William F. Kuntz II, of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Nominated by President Barack Obama, and must I please, if I don't mind adding, this judge was confirmed by unanimous consent. Unanimous consent, we might recall that used to happen, but that was in 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable William F. Coombs.
But in October of 1987, Judge Motley invited my wife, Dr. Alice Beal, and me to join her and her husband, Joel, as their guests at the prestigious Federal Judicial Conference, a meeting of all the judges and leading lawyers of the Second Circuit. Moreover, one evening, she invited us to join her for a pre-dinner cocktail with her husband and the marshals. Naturally, my wife and I were flattered, but curious why she wanted us to meet the marshals who protected federal judges. Had I done something wrong? Imagine our shock when we arrived at her suite, were graciously greeted by the judge and her husband Joel, and introduced to the marshals. But no, not the United States Marshals who protect federal judges, but to Thurgood Marshall and his wife. Now, we thought we might have gotten there perhaps a little early because there was no one else there. But for an hour and a half, Judge Motley and Justice Marshall described traveling through southern states to litigate civil rights cases all alone, facing Klansmen, white supremacist judges and juries, and death threats. They described how Judge Motley had drafted the brief Justice Marshall would successfully argue in Brown versus Board of Education, the case that liberated the law from the deadly denial of equality under the law. All my law partners took note of that meeting. A year later, Judge Motley published a list of 40 black lawyers that Senator D'Amato, who claimed to have been unable to find such a list, should consider appointing to the federal bench. Among those listed was my good friend and mentor, Conrad Harper, who is here today. I wrote the judge a thank you note and sent it to her, and I called her son Joel, who had introduced us, and I said, I've written to your mother, and he said, I know, and he said, did she have any advice for me? And he said, yes, Bill, she told me that when you inevitably called, in addition to writing to her to talk with me, she did have some advice. And I said, really, what's that? He said, do not embarrass me. And as you heard, in October of 2011, President Obama appointed me to the federal bench after I was confirmed by a vote of approval by all 100 United States senators, none of whom had ever heard of me either. None of this would have been possible without the blessing of Judge Motley. She reached out and blessed my family and my career, and ultimately my life, because of her gracious and generous kindness. Her wisdom and support touched every single American. Her judgment made possible the appointment of every single African American judge in our country. Her modesty and discretion, together with the leadership of Justice Marshall and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, ensured the freedoms all Americans enjoy to this day. Come to think of it, she really did introduce me to the marshals who secure our safety, not only to the ones with the guns and badges, for whom I'm very grateful, but to the ones armed with truth, briefs, and the law. And for that, I am humbled and honored to say thank you for allowing me to join you in honoring and celebrating the life of the woman who truly was and will always remain our civil rights queen. Her stamp will not only bear her image and the words USA Forever First, her memory will forever be first in our minds, our hearts, and our judicial history. God bless her, God bless you and yours, and God bless these United States of America, the America she made freer, better, and stronger for each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Very moving, Judge Coons. Thank you so very much. Our final speaker is Jillian Lester, the 15th Dean of the Columbia Law School and the Lucy G. Moses Professor of Law. During her tenure, Dean Lester has led a remarkable program to transform the school's digital and physical infrastructure, and through landmark investments in student financial aid and loan repayment assistance, she has dramatically expanded access to a Columbia legal education. She has made it possible for more students to choose a career in public interest law. Welcome to the stage, Dean Lester.
Thank you very much, and it is such an honor to be here today to join in this celebration and commemoration of the life of Constance Baker Motley through the vehicle of this absolutely spectacular stamp bearing her image. Constance Baker Motley was a 1946 graduate of Columbia Law School, integral to the fabric of Columbia Law School's life. And I cannot think of a more fitting subject for this honor. As other speakers have noted, Constance Baker Motley left an indelible mark on the American civil rights and racial justice canon, serving on the legal team that argued Brown v. Board of Education, representing Martin Luther King Jr., and advocating for James Meredith, a fellow Columbia Law School alumnus, to gain his right to enroll at the University of Mississippi are just a part of her legacy. In addition, her distinction in the legal profession became an example for generations to come, as others have also shared, of breaking barriers. She did not just argue before the Supreme Court. She was the first African-American woman to argue before the Supreme Court. She did not just serve as a judge of the Southern District of New York. She was the first African-American woman to serve in the federal judiciary. As a legal educator, I can tell you that her example continues to burn very, very brightly in the hearts and minds of future lawyers. This past fall, students and faculty at Columbia Law School inaugurated a community book read, something that we'll do every fall. Bring students into the school, they've read something over the summer, and we come together and we discuss it. Well, what did we choose? We chose The Civil Rights Queen by Harvard professor Tomiko Brown-Nagin. This book, as has been mentioned by others, is a biography, a wonderful biography that I recommend to you about Constance Baker Motley's. We were fortunate that Tomiko Brown-Nagin came to Columbia Law School to speak about her writing of the book and Constance Baker Motley's journey, including her journey to Columbia University and her early struggles to find a place in the study of law. At the time she attended Columbia, matriculating in 1944, all the professors were men, and it would be nearly another 30 years before a black professor would grace any of its classrooms. The law school curriculum and experience remained overwhelmingly built around the success of white men, and issues of race were often either wholly avoided in the classroom, or they were taught through the matter-of-fact lens of racial inequality and segregation. The very idea of civil rights law, the very idea of a field of race in the law, these had yet to be even imagined. In recalling her time at the law school, Motley noted that if at her graduation a poll had been taken of those least likely to succeed in the profession, I would have headed the list. No one, as Tomiko Brown-Nagin put it in her biography, expected a woman, particularly a black woman from a modest background, to succeed in the profession. How fortunate we all are that they were wrong. They were very, very wrong. Decades later, that point was driven home as she accepted the nomination as the first black woman to sit on the United States Supreme Court. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson spoke about how doing so meant standing on the shoulders of Constance Baker Motley. The law school is lucky to have our own portrait of Constance Baker Motley hanging in one of our main student study areas. It's a big space. It's a big space with lots of wall space. Students gather there. It's their main place. They come and they read and they interact with each other. Very visible part of the law school. There are only 2 portraits on the wall in that space. There's room for more, but we have only 2. The other portrait is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'd like to say that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in very good company. When our students see her portrait on our walls, they're reminded that although they are studying the law of their time, good, bad, and sometimes very ugly, just as Motley did in her time, they too can shape the law not as it is when they learn it, but how it ought to be. The issuance of this stamp of the United States Postal Service, with its exceptional portrait by Charlie Palmer, is an everyday reminder of that responsibility, that we will change the world, that we will shape the world as it ought to be. Would that we all have the courage, the power, and the heroism of Constance Baker Motley. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Lester. May we have the courage to shape the law, to shape the world as it ought to be, as she has shown us. Thank you. We've come to the conclusion of our program, but I have a few announcements to make. I'd like to thank all of our guests and participants today for making this such a special event. First, Governor Anton Hajar, thank you so much, and the U.S. Postal Service, thank you for choosing to honor Judge Constance Baker Motley with this beautiful forever stamp. Thank you, Commissioner Sue Donahue and the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation for this wonderful space. Thank you, Constance, Connie Royster, Charlie Palmer, Sherrilyn, Ifill. Thank you, Judge Coons. Thank you, Dean Lester. And I want to thank all of the judges and the attorneys, the politicians. I want to thank all of the wonderful people who took their time to be here today. This is New York City. There are so many other places to be. And you chose to honor Judge Constance Baker Motley. That is a wonderful thing. I want to thank the performers today, Anna Hira Smith McDaniel with that wonderful song, and We Will Rise. We will continue to rise. Thank you, Craig Stagg, for that wonderful Lift Every Voice. We are lifted. We will be lifted. And of course, the New York City Police Department Ceremonial Unit Color Guard. And of course, as we thank each other, we thank you in the audience. In a few minutes, our distinguished program participants will be available to autograph your programs and your keepsakes. Remember, you can buy your Constance Baker Motley stamps at the Postal Service's retail booth. I have enjoyed being your mistress of ceremony. And I would like to say, as a civil rights attorney, as a child who was bused across town in a segregated city, as someone who has collected Black Heritage stamps for many years, it has been my honor to be your MC today. Thank you, and go well and in peace.